Good morning, grade 12 learners. Good morning, grade 12 teachers. Good morning, everybody, all the stakeholders in as far as this project is concerned. I'm happy to be here again as we are going to be preparing you learners for the next coming June examination. It's been a while, but I'm excited to be here. And this morning, I'm going to be taking you through just short preparations, how to prepare yourself in as far as the June exam is concerned for the grade 12. My name is Mr. M.S. Mui. I'm from the province as the DCES for Business Studies in the Free State. My presentation for today will focus on the following. We'll look at the scope. What will the June exam be covering? We'll also look at the date for the papers and the structures thereof. And following that, we'll also look at some of the topics for concern. And the reason why we say they are topics for concern is the fact that we are going to make a reflection, because for the first term, grade 12 learners, you were exposed to the control test, which was covering topics of the first term, and you set for a controlled test. Now, after sitting for that control test, by now you know your results. However, as we were moderating some of your scripts, we managed to pick up some of the topics. Hence, we say there are topics for concern. Some of the topics that we felt you as learners or most of the learners did not do well on those topics. And unfortunately, those topics, they form part of what you are going to be writing on in June. So when we say some of the topics for concern, it's a reflection, because we have conducted what we call item and error analysis on the control test that you wrote during the first term. And of course, the last item would be conclusion. All right, let's look at the scope. Now remember, in June right now, you are going to be writing two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Let's look at the scope for the two papers. Let's look at the scope for paper 1. And we are actually saying to you, both papers, paper 1, paper 2, they are going to be covering all first and second terms topics as per the annual teaching plan. So you are actually going to be assessed on topics that you should have covered first term and second term. And which are those topics? Let's look at paper 1. For example, paper 1, we know that paper 1, it covers two broad topics, business environments and business operations. Under business environments, you are going to be assessed on the impact of recent legislation on business. Legislation is going to be assessed. Under business environments, you are also going to be assessed on business strategies. You are also going to be assessed on business sectors and their environments. Those subtopics, they form part of business environments and they fall under paper 1. And under paper 2, you are going to be assessed on human resources function and also on quality of performance. Now, all of these topics, legislation, strategies, sectors, HR, and quality, you have covered them by now according to the annual teaching plan. And these topics, they are going to form part of paper 1. And moving to paper 2, the broad topics under paper 2, you have business ventures and business roles. Under business ventures, you are going to be assessed on management and leadership. You are also going to be assessed on investment opportunities, investment securities or opportunities, and also investment insurance. They form part of business ventures. These are the topics that you must have covered, and they form part of business ventures. And they are going to be assessed under paper 1. And then on business roles, you have ethics and professionalism. You also have creative thinking and problem solving. And the last topic under business roles is team performance, assessment and conflict management. All these topics, they are there in your annual teaching plan. So, like I said, the whole June examination will be based on all first term and second term's topics as per your annual teaching plan. So this is basically your scope. This is what the examination will be based on. These are the topics that you should have covered with your teachers, or you are in the process of finalizing them, so that when you sit for exam, you know that they are covered already. So, done with the scope. Let's move on to the date and the structure. Now remember, you've got two papers. Paper 1, you are going to write paper 1 here in the province on the 24th of June 2021. And paper 2, you are going to write it on the 30th of June 2021. Now you can see you also have got enough time in between the two papers. You know, after writing paper 1, you'll have enough time to prepare now for paper 2. Let's look at the structures. The structures are the same. The only difference is going to be topics under paper 1 and topics under paper 2. The structures or the structure remains the same. The paper, for example, paper 1 is going to be structured in this manner. The paper will be divided into 3 sections. Section A, B, and C. Section A, you will have a compulsory section having 3 objective kind of questions. Your multiple choice, 10 marks. Choose the correct word, 10 marks, and matching 10 marks. And the marks for section A is 30, and this section is compulsory. And the estimated time you can spend on this section is 30 minutes. It means you don't have to go beyond 30 minutes, because if you go beyond 30 minutes, then it means other sections are likely to suffer. So you must make sure that you work smart, you work within time, so that you are able to cover all the questions as you are required. And the cognitive levels of questions in section A is mostly your level 1 and your level 2 kind of questions. And then the second part of the question will be section B. Section B, you are going to be provided with 3 questions, but expected to choose any 2 from the 3. Each question, for example, will be focusing on a specific topic. Like I said, the structures, they will depend on the paper that you are writing. Let's take paper 1. We know that paper 1, the broad topics under paper 1 is business environment and business operations. Question 2, for example, will be based on business environments for 40 marks. Question 3 will be based on business operations for 40 marks. And then question 3, it will be a combination, or normally referred to as miscellaneous question. It's a combination of the 2 broad topics now. And you are expected to choose 2 from the 3. You don't have to spend more than 60 minutes, meaning that because you are answering 2 questions there, you are expected to spend 30 minutes on each question, which should not be more than 60 minutes, an hour on the 2. And cognitive levels of questions in there, they cover level 1 to 6, meaning that you have your low, your medium, even your high order questions in this section. And then the last part of the structure is section C. The paper will also have section C. Section C is made up of essay questions. You are going to be provided with 2 essay questions and expected to answer 1 from the 2. And each essay question will focus on a particular broad topic, depending on the paper that you are writing. And each question or essay question is allocated 40 marks, and you are expected not to spend more than 30 minutes on section C, because you are answering only one question or one essay. Cognitive levels covered in this essay or in this question, it's your level 3 to level 6. It means you have your medium order questions and your high order questions in section C now. And the total marks in the in paper 1 is 150, and total marks in paper 2 is also 150, and the time that you are given to write these two papers or each paper is 2 hours. So it's 60 minutes. In fact, not 60 minutes, 120 minutes. It's 60 minutes times 2, 120 minutes. So you've got 2 hours to answer paper 1, 2 hours to answer paper 2, each paper carrying 150 marks. And by the look of things, I mean, you've got more than enough time to answer these questions. So done about the structure and the date on which you'll be sitting for the June examination. Now let's come to the real core, topics for concern. Remember what I said earlier. I said we are saying topics for concern because it is an analysis after looking at how learners performed in the March test. Take, for example, under business environments on legislation, there was this question on Skills Development Act. The question was on the implications. The question said, explain the implications of the Skills Development Act on the human resources function. Now, I think the key word there is implications. And when we were moderating, what we picked up is that a lot of learners did not answer this question correctly. Now, they mistaken implications to impact. There's a difference between implications and impact. Most of the learners, instead of providing the implications of Skills Development Act, they rather provided the impact of Skills Development Act on the business. There's a huge difference. I mean, when you talk of the impact has got more to do with the influence, you know, and the impact can either be negative or positive. But when you look at the implications have got more to do with the consequences. You know, what will be expected now of the business to do now that they are implementing Skills Development Act. And here are some of the responses that we were expecting from the candidates or from the learners when answering this question. The human resources function should interpret the aims and requirements of the Skills Development Act and adapt workplace skills training programs accordingly. Now you can hear it clearly there. That is the implication. That is the consequences thereof of Skills Development Act on the human resources function. You know, it's different like the impact, because when you talk of the impact, for example, one of the positive impact of Skills Development Act on the business would be the business will now be globally competitive, because now employees will be sharp in as far as skills are concerned. Now you can see the difference between implications and impact. Implications is what is now the business is expected to do when they implement Skills Development Act. What will be the consequences thereof? Bullet number 2 there, it says, the business should also now identify the training needs of the employees and provide them with training opportunities so that they will perform their tasks efficiently. You see, that's the implication on the human resources function. The business is now expected to use the National Qualification Framework, or normally referred to as the NQF, to assess the skills levels of employees. That's the implication. The business is expected now to interpret or implement the aims or requirements of the framework for the National Skills Development Strategy. The business is expected to assist managers in identifying skills, training needs to help them to introduce learnerships. The business is also expected now to contribute 1% of the salary bill to the skills development levy. So this is just briefly some of the responses that we were expecting when learners had to answer this question. So don't make a mistake. We are saying this question is a topic for concern because learners did not actually do as expected in this question. So when this question comes now, possibly maybe in the June exam, make no mistake and answer it accordingly. And remember, it may not focus on Skills Development Act. It may be implications of, let's say, Basic Conditions of Employment Act on the human resources function. You must also there not make a mistake of providing the impact instead of implications. So be careful of implications. Anytime a question is referring to implications, make sure now that you answer it correctly and accordingly. The second topic that we also picked up as a topic for concern following the responses of learners in the control test is compliance. Let's take, for example, this one. This one appeared in the test. Advise the business on ways in which they can comply with Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act. Compliance. And remember, the examiner may pick a question on compliance with reference to any act. It may be compliance to Labor Relations Act or Consumer Protection Act or Skills Development Act or Employment Equity Act. Remember, you've got 8 acts as part of your content that you must have studied. So the examiner may pick on any act, but the key word there is compliance. What are you supposed to do, or what are you supposed to provide when a question says give or advise the business on ways in which the business can comply with the act, in this instance B-BBEE. These are some of the responses that were expected when learners had to answer this question. Bullet number 1, businesses must appoint black people in managerial position. That's the compliance. That's a way to comply with the act. Businesses must sell shares to black employees or to black people. That's a way to comply with the act. Businesses must send black people for skills development training. Businesses must outsource their services to BEE compliant suppliers. All these have got to do with now compliance with the act, and in particular B-BBEE Act. Businesses must implement affirmative action when making appointments. Businesses must develop small business through ESD. Business must improve the standard of living of the communities in which they operate. Now, you can see all of these have got to do with compliance. And like I said, a question may be based on compliance, but it may be with reference to any act depending on what the examiner has chosen. So it was also a topic for concern that learners did not do well on, and we are now saying to you, in preparing yourself for the upcoming June examination, make no mistake, because legislation, remember we said, it forms part of the content that will be assessed in the June examination. Let's move to another topic that was also a topic for concern. Still under business environments, there was this topic on business strategies, but with focus to industrial tools. It said, explain how any pestle factors pose challenges to businesses. And if I remember vividly, this was in an essay. It was question 6. And when you look at question 6, I was really disturbed with the fact that not many learners answered questions on strategies. And I don't know why. And maybe teachers must begin to, to look at this carefully. Is it because this topic, according to the ATP, is covered towards the end of the term, or what? Because the impression that we got is that a lot of schools, a lot of learners were actually not taught this topic. That's why they did not answer. And even those who answered question on strategies, they did not answer that question convincingly. They did not do well on that question. So a question, strategies remain a question or topic for concern also. Remember, it forms part of paper 1, and it will also definitely be assessed. So make no mistake and prepare yourself thoroughly. As a teacher, make sure that now you close those gaps in preparing your learners for June examination. Now, this question on pestle. Remember, pestle is just an acronym. The key word there, you must know what each letter stands for. And I've just selected just a few. P will represent your political factors. E, and you've got 2 E's there. The first E will represent economic factors. The other one may be representing environmental factors. T will represent technological factors. So I just decided to pick on only these 3. You still have others that you must still look at, but the most important thing, how these factors pose challenges to business. You must convince that they pose a challenge. They create problems for a business in this manner. Let's look at political factors, for example. Some government policies may affect business. Now, remember, when we talk of government, you cannot separate government from politics, because governments are ruled by political parties. Hence, we link this with political factors. Now, government, they come up with policies, and policies may affect businesses. This is how this can pose a challenge to a business. If you are running a business, policies, definitely you have to abide by the policies, and they form part of political factors. Another factor still under political factors, consumer rights organizations may prevent businesses from selling products if they do not meet certain requirements. They link with political factors because they still link with policies laid down by the government, and which link with political factors. You have your consumer organization, rights consumer organizations, and they may prevent businesses because they want to see whether the businesses is implementing what? Government policies. Another factor or another point under political factors may be trade agreements may prevent businesses from importing some medicines or from some products and so on. When you talk of trade agreements, who ultimately ensure that trade agreements between countries take place is the government. And the government, like I said earlier on, is ruled by political parties. So you can't separate the government from politics. Hence, that links with political factors. And that may impact, or it may pose a challenge. For example, if you are running a business and you are involved in international trade. So these are just some of the points that we were expecting when you were discussing the pestle factors, political factors, factor, for example, and what you expected to respond thereof. Let's move to economic factors, for example. Economic factors, they've got to do with the economy now, and they will pose a challenge definitely to a business. For example, inflation and interest rates may negatively impact on the business. This forms part of the economic factor, and definitely it poses a challenge to a business. If you are running a business, interest rates, inflation will affect you, and they will negatively affect you. We all know every time the governor of the Reserve Bank, weighs in as far as the interest rates are concerned, we watch the space with keen interest because we want to know whether he's going to take them up or take them down. Either way, they will definitely impact on your business. And it's an economic factor, and it definitely poses a challenge to a business. Still under economic factors, loans may be expensive due to high interest rates. If you are running a business, you have obtained a loan, interest rates are, increased, that will impact on the interest rate that we're going to pay at the end of the day to the bank. That will definitely also pose a challenge, and it links with your economic factors. Fluctuations in foreign currency may restrict imports. This links with economic factors also. So it also poses a challenge if you are running a business. Fine. Lastly, let's look at technological factors. Technology may, for example, it will impact the business in each manner. The business may not keep up with or be aware of the latest technology. We all know that technology, it's here to stay, and we have to keep up with technology. However, technology is also one of the personal factors, technological factors that will pose a challenge to a business. If the business does not keep up with the latest, definitely it will be left behind. Employees may not be skilled to operate or maintain new technology or equipment. It links with technological factors. This is how this poses a challenge to a business. Businesses may not be able to afford new technology. This also links with technological factors. No, that's briefly the personal factors. You can engage on other factors that I may not have touched on, but at least it gives me comfort to say I have now made you aware that the personal factors, it was also a question that was a topic for concern, and going forward, this is how you should now begin to answer it so that you don't make a mistake. And remember, with strategies, you still have got other industrial tools like your POTAS 5 forces, and you also have got your SWOT analysis. Look at also those because they form part of strategies and they fall under business environments. Another topic now on business operations. Remember, business operations, it falls under paper 1. It was on job analysis. There was a question on job analysis. I was so surprised to realize that learners cannot explain what job analysis is. And clearly, if they cannot explain what job analysis is, it means they also cannot explain the two main components of job analysis. Job description and job specification. When we talk of job description, it describes the duties or responsibilities of a specific job or a summary of the nature or type of job. The key word there is duties and responsibilities. That has got to do with your job description. If somebody says, this is not part of my job description, it means that person is saying this is not part of my core duties or responsibilities in the post that I'm occupying. And on the other side, job specification has got to do with the minimum acceptable personal qualities or skills or qualifications needed for the post. So you must clearly, strike a clear difference between the two, job description and job specification. Job description has got to do with duties, responsibilities. Specifications has got to do with skills, qualities, and qualifications needed for a job. So make sure that if a question like this, it comes in the examination, you don't make a mistake. You answer it accordingly. So it was also a topic for concern on-the-job analysis, just go and revise and look at that carefully so that you are better prepared for the June examination. Let's move to another topic. This one was not in the test, but it may be there in the June examination under human resources. And here we are talking about the role of the interviewer or the interviewee. When we talk of the interviewer, we are referring to the business itself. When we talk of the interviewee, we are referring to the candidate or the applicant, him or herself. If, for example, a question says, explain the role of the interviewer. Remember, I said the interviewer is the business. Now, the role of the business now, when preparing for an interview, you know, the examiner simply plays around these keywords. The role of the interviewer when preparing. Now, the key word there is when preparing. When preparing, it means it's before the interview takes place. Now, candidates or learners, they make a mistake of mixing their points. For example, if your question says the role of the interviewer during the interview, there's a difference there. Before or when preparing, and again, or during the interview. So just be careful of the responses that you provide there and read the question clearly before you answer. Sometimes the question may be the role of the interviewee. So just be careful, you read the question carefully before you answer, and you know exactly now that this question is expecting the following kind of responses. Now, in this instance, some of the responses we are expecting from you when you answer this question, the role of the interviewer when preparing, because it is before the interview, include amongst others the following. The interviewer, which is the business, should develop a core set of questions based on the skills, knowledge, or abilities required. The key word there, develop core set of questions, because it is before the interview. The interviewer should check or read the application or verify the CV of every candidate for anything that may need to be explained. You see, it is still before the interviews. The interviewer should book and prepare the venue for the interview. You see, it's in preparation. The interviewer should set the interview date and ensure that all interviews take place on the same date if possible. The interviewer should inform all shortlisted candidates about the date and place of the interview. The interviewer should plan the program for the interview and determine the time that should be allocated to each candidate. The interviewer should notify all panel members conducting the interview about the date and place of the interview. So all these responses are before the interview takes place. So when you come across a question like this, just be careful, read it carefully, and make sure that you answer it accordingly and don't make a mistake of not answering it accordingly. So it's also a topic for concern. Let's move to the next one. This one is on business roles, creative thinking and problem solving. And this, one common kind of a question. If a question says to you, differentiate between decision making and problem solving, clearly you've got to be knowing what makes the two different from one another. Let's take decision making. I will just focus on the two starting bullets. The first bullet on decision making is saying, when you talk of a decision making, you are referring to a process which is often done by one person. You know, a decision is made by normally one person or a member of a senior management who makes it authoritarian. You know, that's my final decision. You know, one person taking a decision. On the other side, problem solving, you are referring to a process where problems are solved by a group or a team or an individual team member. So you can see clearly, a line between the two. A process being undertaken by one person doing it in a manner that is authoritarian, and on the other side, problem solving, a group of people, a team, sometimes a team, an individual of a team member, coming together in a way to resolve a problem. So when you come across a question like this, make no mistake, because a lot of learners, they tend to confuse the two, or they end up saying conflicting statements, or they end up saying statements that nullify what they are supposed to have said in the first place, and so on. So decision making and problem solving, a common kind of a question and a topic for concern, because learners normally do not do well in this, and we are actually saying to you, wake up, watch out, make sure that you don't commit the same mistake. And still on business roles, focusing also on creative thinking and problem solving. But this one, the focus is on creative thinking. This question was there in the March test. Explain the benefits of creative thinking in the workplace. The benefits, when you talk of benefits, you are actually referring to the advantages of creative thinking in the workplace. This question has been asked many a times, but to our surprise, learners still don't get it right. And we are saying to you, don't make a mistake of not answering this question properly. The responses that we are expecting from you when it comes to this question includes, amongst others, the following: better or unique or unconventional ideas or solutions are generated. That's the benefit of creative thinking. If there is creative thinking in the workplace, unique ideas, they end up being generated, or better ways of solving problems, get generated, and so on. Creative thinking may give the business a competitive advantage if unusual or unique solutions or ideas or strategies are implemented. And please, when you answer a question like this, don't just answer it in one, in a phrase kind of a thing, especially if it says explain. Because when we say explain, it's going to be split marking, and we are expecting you to support any point that you are putting forward. Like you take the second bullet there. Creative thinking may give business competitive advantage. That will be 1 mark. And then the supporting statement would be, if unique solutions are implemented, you get another tick or another mark. The first bullet there, better or unique or conventional ideas, 1 mark, because the key word is unique or better ideas. And then are generated is the supporting statement, you get 2 marks for that. Complex business problems may be solved, not just only problems, complex ones, because of implementing creative thinking. Productivity in the business may increase, 1 mark, as management or employees may quickly generate multiple ideas which utilizes time and money more effectively. So you see, you don't simply state facts without supporting them. And if you support your statements, you get all full 2 marks for that. Managers or employees have more confidence, when they implement creative thinking. They become more confident as they can live up to their full potential. You see, as they can live up to their full potential, it's a supporting statement. You get another mark for that. Managers will be better leaders. That's 1 mark, as they will be able to handle or manage change positively and creatively. That is a supporting statement. You get another mark for that. So these are some of the responses that we are expecting from you. And this question, like I said, it was there in the March test, and learners did not answer it convincingly. They did not do well in it, but it has been there year in, year out, and it forms part of what you have covered in the first term. And it's going to be there, creative thinking now. It's going to be there as part of the content that will be assessed in the June examination. So make sure that you don't make a mistake of not answering it accordingly. You don't lose marks unnecessarily. The next topic for concern, it was on ethics and professionalism. Also very common. There was a question in the March test that required learners to differentiate between ethics and professionalism. Learners could not do that. I was just so disappointed. And then this one was even in a scenario, kind of a question. It was based on unprofessional business practices. Suggest ways that a business could introduce to deal with unprofessional business practices. And you must go back to your examination guideline under ethics and professionalism and clearly look at what constitutes unethical business practices and also what constitutes unprofessional business practices. That will help you so that when you answer as accordingly. In this instance, the focus was on unprofessional business practices. Now, what was the focus on? The focus was on unauthorized use of workplace funds and resources. It means this is an unprofessional business practice. What is it that the business must do to correct this behavior if it is happening in a business? You suggest ways that a business could introduce to deal with this unprofessional business practice, unauthorized use of workplace funds and resources. Now, caution there, we are saying all solutions or all ways that you are going to provide, they should be positive and they should be corrective in nature. Let's look at the ways, some of the ways. These are just some of the ways to deal with the behavior. We were expecting responses amongst others, the following. The business should conduct regular audits. If you know what an audit is, you conduct regular audits as a way to deal with this unauthorized use of workplace funds and resources. If you conduct regular audits, that will help deal with this behavior, or it will help solve this problem of unprofessional business practice. The business can identify risk areas or vulnerable areas. By simply identifying risk areas within a business, it's a way to deal with this. The business can limit the number of employees having access to business funds and assets. This is a way also to deal with unauthorized use of workplace funds and resources. If the business limits the number of employees having access to funds and assets. The business can implement or introduce fraud prevention strategies. This is a way to deal with the behavior. The business can also educate employees about the impact of fraud. It's a way to deal with this unprofessional business practice. The business can also come up with fraud prevention so that it should be a collective responsibility of business and workers, meaning that the business should make it a point that everybody plays their part. You know, employees, they know that, if we do this, we are hitting our own business. It's a collective responsibility. The business can come up with clear policies so that, and put them in place so that employees are aware of what is considered to be fraud. Employees should know that if I'm doing this, it's fraud. If I'm doing it, it's not expected. If I'm doing that, it's wrong. The business can set up systems in the organization for the reporting of fraud and corruption. So these are just some of the responses that we were expecting, or that we are expecting, if you have to come up with ways in which a business can deal with this unprofessional business practice. And this unprofessional business practice is unauthorized use of workplace funds and resources. So it will differ. It will depend on what the examiner may have picked. The examiner may pick, for example, one of the unprofessional business practice may be sexual harassment. You must also come up with ways in which business can deal with the behavior. So don't make a mistake when you answer a question such as this in the June examination. And this actually brings me to the wrapping up of what I had prepared for you today. Remember, I did not touch on all the topics that are topics for concern, like, for example, in main topics such as your investment securities, your investment insurance. I did not touch on those, but you must still prepare yourself thoroughly for that. And I've got no doubt that if you sit down, you go through your work of first term and your work of second term, and you take into account those tips that I've highlighted when answering certain questions, you will definitely do better. And remember, your June exam is actually also preparing you for the trial examination or your preparatory examination. So take your June examination seriously, prepare thoroughly for it, and see how you perform in the June examination, and take it from there. With those few words, I would really like to wish you good luck with your examination this month. And I also want to leave you with this quotation by Anonymous. I quote, "Hope is the only thing stronger than fear." Close quote. Remain hopeful, remain strong, remain committed, and remain positive. With all of those